Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. It's another Dump the Corruption show. Tonight, I want to talk about the plans, of AIPAC. I also want to talk about the candidacy, of RFK Jr. And then I want to finish with some activities of the Republicans in Congress with respect to Social Security. Okay. So I'm going to start with a piece from Common Dreams. And here's, of course, a picture of the squad, or at least some of the members of the squad, the four original members. And from left to right, there's Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota. Also, Ayanna Pressley, a Democrat of Massachusetts. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat of New York. And Rashida Tlaib, who's a Democrat from Michigan. They appear at a July 15th, 2019 press conference in Washington, D.C. And the photo is from Getty Images. It's by Alex Robluski. The headline is, quote, price of defending apartheid, unquote. AIPAC set to spend $100 million against the squad. If that's only the original squad, then it's $25 million, roughly $25 million each. A tagline of the article says, quote, and AIPAC would lose, said the Progressive Political Action Group, Our Revolution. This article was written by Brett Wilkins on November 15, 2023. The powerful lobby group, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, is expected to spend 9 figures, that's $100 million or more, in a bid to unseat over half a dozen progressive lawmakers who have been critical of Israeli human rights crimes in Gaza. Slate reported on Wednesday. Slate politics writer Alex Salmon wrote that, quote, close watchers now expect AIPAC to spend at least $100 million in 2024 Democratic primaries. That's not in the whole election even. It's just in the primaries. Largely trained on eliminating incumbent squad members from their seats. Simon said that Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, who's a Democrat from specifically Missouri, Jamal Bowman, a Democrat of New York, and Summer Lee, of Pennsylvania. That's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the squad members. The most outspoken and apologetically leftist contingent of the Democratic Party in national office, unquote, are among AIPAC's top targets. Surprisingly, they're not going after Katie Porter. I know she often is not identified as a squad member, but she's pretty visible too, and pretty leftist. Then there's also Greg Casar and Bedelia Ramirez and Becca Balint. Uh, quote, the price of defending apartheid keeps going up, quipped Palestinian American writer and political analyst Yusuf Monayar in response to the report. Summerlee tweeted, PAC promising to spend $100 million against 5 working class black and brown representatives in working class districts is why we can't have a representative democracy. I don't know, what if we had governing that reflected our community's needs instead of AIPAC's? That was a quote tweet of what Alex Salmon reported on. The Ohio political activist Nina Turner wrote on social media, quote, this is anti-blackness, period. Tlaib, the only Palestinian American member of Congress, has accused Israel of genocide for killing and maiming tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza and forcibly displacing nearly 3/4 of the besieged Strip's people. Many experts concur with her characterization. Tlaib, Omar, Bush, and a handful of other Democratic lawmakers have also called Israel an apartheid state, an assessment shared by a growing number of rights groups, international figures, and even former Israeli government officials. However, the furthest most progressive Democrats have gone in criticizing Israel's policies and practices is endorsing a resolution introduced last month by Cori Bush, urging U.S. President Joe Biden to press Israel's far-right government to agree to a ceasefire in Gaza. On Wednesday, 24 House members, led by Representatives Ocasio-Cortez, Mark Pocan, and Betty McCollum. Mark Pocan, by the way, is from Wisconsin, okay, and Betty McCollum is a Minnesota representative, sent a letter to Biden calling for a ceasefire. As Salmon noted, a recent Data for Progress poll found that 2/3 of U.S. voters, including 80% of Democrats, also back a ceasefire. So you might ask, if we have a democracy, why isn't 80% of the ruling party sufficient to pass the backing for a ceasefire in the House? Connor Farrell, president of the progressive fundraising group Left Rising, told Salmon that AIPAC wants, quote, to make the statement this cycle that no one is safe from their wrath, that if you speak out, you can be targeted, no matter how popular or how many cycles of incumbent you are, unquote. Quote, it's extremely audacious, Farrell added. Progressive Democrats are no strangers to AIPAC, spending big in bids to defame, defeat, or unseat them. As Salmon noted, in the 2022 midterms, the Israeli lobby became the largest single-issue outside spender in Democratic primaries, pouring in nearly $30 million via the super PAC, the United Democracy Project, and millions more via the Democratic Majority for Israel PAC. It was an astronomical amount of money, mostly directed at knocking progressives out of the primaries, largely in open and redrawn seats. AIPAC's heavy spending was blamed for helping Representative Haley Stevens, Democrat of Michigan, defeat incumbent Andy Levin, a self-described Zionist Jew, last year in Michigan's 11th Congressional District Democratic primary. And, of course, we covered that last night. Conversely, or did we cover it on Wednesday? I forget. Conversely, Some of the staunchest supporters of Israel in Congress have benefited from AIPAC's largesse. The group was the number one donor to both House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries during the last election cycle. AIPAC has also been a top contributor to lawmakers like Representative Richie Torres, Democrat of New York, and Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey, who not only vocally support Israel but attack colleagues like Tlaib and Omar for their pro-Palestinian views. AIPAC was by far Gottheimer's largest contributor in the 2022 election cycle, donating more than $216,000 to his campaign. The same goes for Torres, who received over $141,000 from the group during the same period. Follow the money, says Danny B. Glover. Out of the 22 Democrats, 17 are funded, by AIPAC. And Prem Thacker says, here are the Democrats who voted with Republicans to censure Representative Rashida Tlaib. And here's a list of them: Cohn, Costa, Craig, Davis of North Carolina, Frankel, Goldman, Gottheimer, Lanceman, Lee of Nevada, also Manning, Moskowitz, Nickel, Pappas, Perez, Ryan, Schneider, Schreier, Soto, Torres of New York, Wasserman Schultz, and Wilson, of Florida. Some observers also believe it is no coincidence that Representative Jack Bergman, Republican of Michigan, whose third biggest campaign contributor during last election cycle was AIPAC, introduced a censure motion against Tlaib last month, baselessly calling her a terrorist sympathizer. Progressive lawmakers haven't taken AIPAC's attacks lying down. Omar, who like Tlaib has received death threats after being targeted by the group, has accused the organization of endangering her life. Pocan, earlier this month, called AIPAC, quote, a cancerous presence on our democracy and politics in general. Quote, I don't give a fuck about AIPAC, unquote, he said, after a group falsely accused him and other representatives of, quote, trying to keep Hamas in power, unquote. AIPAC has also come under fire from Democrats of all stripes for endorsing more than 100 Republican lawmakers who voted to subvert the 2020 presidential election in service of former President Donald Trump's, quote, big lie, unquote, that Democrats rigged the contest. So, alluding to right-wing support for the group, Cori Bush wrote on social media Wednesday that, quote, AIPAC is attempting to buy blue seats with GOP donor money, unquote. Absolutely, they are, and have been for a long time. Salmon wrote that AIPAC's effort to oust popular Democrats is fraught with risks for the group. Toppling an incumbent is not easy. Tlaib, Omar, Bush, Bowman, Presley, and Ocasio-Cortez are all well liked, especially in their district. Some, like Tlaib, are masters of constituent services. Others have shown incredible fundraising chops and boast massive grassroots networks. I can say that, if I recall correctly, in Ocasio-Cortez's case, in her last go-round in 2022, she raised roughly $25 million in support of her campaign. Uh, that means that even if AIPAC tries to go after her with $25 million, they still wouldn't be able to outraise and outspend her. And if they tried to unseat her, probably she'd raise even more money. Anyway, there have been previous attempts to take out Tlaib and Ocasio-Cortez that failed spectacularly and expensively. Omar, who looked vulnerable in her previous race, didn't really campaign that time around. AIPAC might find itself burning money to fight on inhospitable terrain, and if it fails, the group's fearsome reputation in D.C. will be greatly diminished. Quote, that AIPAC feels a need to spend this much money at all could well be taken as a sign of weakness, not strength, unquote. Salmon added, or, quote, already unlimited Israeli militarism is deeply unpopular. A full year of bombings of Palestinian hospitals and mass casualties of children in Gaza could make the AIPAC line even more unpopular still. I think this opinion of Alex Salmon is pretty well founded. I think AIPAC is treading on dangerous ground. It is becoming more and more well known that they go into Democratic primaries with Republican money in order to move the whole political system over to the right by knocking out the progressive Democrats. And they have been doing that for a long time, but 2024 promises to be their most high-powered effort uh, as yet. And what they spend as a PAC by themselves doesn't count whatever super PAC money would be spent. You have to remember that AIPAC has a super PAC it spawned called the United Democracy Project, the UDP, and they can spend all the money they can raise on this particular campaign, bombard the airwaves against the lefty Congress people to try to get them out. Now, I think they will fail because you also need a ground game. The ground game, of AOC is pretty fearsome in her district. And I believe that the ground game, of Rashida Tlaib is also very strong. I don't think they're going to beat her. And I think they're going to have a tough time with the rest of them as well, and will end up spending a lot more than the 100 million that they're currently planning to spend. And I also agree with our revolution. I don't think they're going to be very successful with these people. It all depends on how and where they allocate the money. In the context of the AIPAC money and its influence in politics, though, I want to move on to our next piece. Sorry, that wasn't our next piece. I don't think it showed up anyway. But I want to share the screen now with a video. Many of you are likely to recognize this video. I hope it's the one I intended. It is not.
Taking advantage of.
And get back. Sorry about that. I have the wrong video up. I thought I had the right one up. Let me get to it. Okay. hopefully it'll be playable now. Okay, so let me present it.
This is a day of affirmation, a celebration of liberty. We stand here in the name of freedom. We are committed to peaceful and nonviolent change. We must recognize the full human equality of all of our people, not just to those of a particular religion, not just to those of a particular race, not just to the wealthy, but to all of the people. We must do it for the single and fundamental reason that it is the right thing to do.
A new twist this morning for the country's most famous political dynasty.
RFKJ Jr.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
on October 9th in the state of
That it's time to heal a divided nation and return the power to the people.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
We are told today that our nation is hopelessly divided, but I found something different as I travel this country. I have witnessed an upwelling of optimism that I've never seen before. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way. And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party and from all other political parties.
So that's a clear message. He's declaring his independence from the parties. But, okay, is he declaring his independence, okay, from other influences? That's a very important question. You can be independent of the two major parties and other political parties as well, but you can also be totally dependent on certain other interests. For example, you can be dependent, okay, on AIPAC. You can be dependent, okay, on DMFI. You can be dependent on the Adelson money. Let's see what else Bobby Kennedy has to say about those possible dependencies.
I haven't made this decision lightly. It's very painful for me to let go of the party of my uncles, my father, my grandfather, and both of my great-grandfathers. But my sacrifice is nothing compared to the risk our founding fathers took when they signed the Declaration of Independence 247 years ago.
I have to say he's right about that. Completely right about that. I sort of have to laugh at it, just a little.
They knew that if their revolution failed, every last one of them would be hanged. They chose to place everything on the line. When John Adams put his pen down after adding his signature to the Declaration, he turned to those present and he said to them, sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. From this day on, I am with my country. I'm going to make that same pledge to you today so that I can stand before you, as every leader should stand before you, free of partisan allegiance, free from the backroom deals, a servant only to my conscience, to my Creator, and to you.
Free from the party allegiance, free from backroom deals. Is he really free from the backroom deals? He raised so far from the election of 2024, okay, according to the FEC, he had total receipts between February of 2023 and September 30th of 2023 of $15,078,528.42 in contributions from individuals. Okay, there were itemized individual contributions of 9.978, 9,979,363 individual contributions that, okay, were itemized, and $5,072,721 $21 million in unitemized individual contributions. I'm pretty sure the $5 million is in small individual contributions, probably less than $200. But that $9.9 million we're talking about of itemized individual contributions, you can be pretty sure that that amount of money was from large individual contributions greater than $200 from relatively wealthy people who can afford to spend, to contribute greater than $200 to primary campaigns. Now, we're talking now about primary campaigns. Now, apart from those contributions, there were other committee contributions of $13,200 in his filing to the FEC, and then there were other receipts of $2,183.08. Don't want to read this incorrectly. He spent $8.9 million mostly in operating expenditures. His total disbursements included none on fundraising, which is rather strange. He spent none on transfers to other authorized committees, none on exempt accounting and legal expenses. He spent total contribution refunds of $252,871. I'd be interested to see what those were for or were to. That would be kind of interesting. He ended with cash on hand of $6.172 million and no debts owed to committee and no debts or loans that are owned by the committee. So that was his FEC filing. What we like to know where the itemized individual contributions came from. I know that I certainly would, because that is a lot of fundraising over a roughly 6-month period. or a 7-month period, rather. There was no further breakdown yet of this in that I could find in Open Secrets at this point. Let's see if there's more information in the fundraising section of this. Oh, here are some of the contributor names. Corina Zygorakis made 2 contributions of $3,300 each. A guy by the name of Alfred Zaganino contributed $3,300. There are minor contributions here, like contribution of $2,812. So my assumption that the itemized contributions were all large contributions over 200 was not correct. Not correct. There were 22,003 entries, that were itemized. So I'm not sure then what the unitemized contributions were. There's no data on that here, which is interesting. We don't know where they came from. As I said, there was $8.9 million in disbursements, that is spending. It does itemize refunds to various people. There were 2,731 entries here, and I haven't had a chance to go over the financials there. There's a category of spending by others to support, or oppose. There was $155,000 in support from what looks like a PAC. $155,000 in support from American Values 2024, and another $71,304 from American Values 2024. It is not known whether the second contribution was a contribution supporting him or opposing him. The first contribution, though, $155,478, was certainly opposing him. The second contribution, it's unknown whether it supported, or opposed him. That suggests that American Values 2024 is a super PAC or perhaps a carry committee. I can't say what it is based on the data that I'm giving, that we're given here. Let's see what else we have. Under the filings category, we have a statement of candidacy, 3 entries there. So I wanted to give you some feel for what the filing was and some feel for what we know about the filing and what is still not transparent to us. But let us now continue with the video and see what else we can get at.
Every president enters office promising to unite the nation and to work with people from the other party across the aisle. None of them ever does it. They can't. They're already chosen a side. Well, I'm not going to have that problem. I'm going to build coalitions from both sides of the aisle. And except for the...
Would it help if he built the coalitions of people from both sides of the aisle that was supported, by AIPAC, or that was supported, for example, by other very pro-Israeli interests? would such a bipartisan coalition really be one that didn't have any bias with respect to American national interests? This is not all about parties. There are other interests that are important, okay, in elections and that are important, okay, in politics. It's not all about party. It's not about whether he's partisan in the sense that he's for one party, okay, or against another. It's also about whether he is partisan in relation to certain interests and not, okay, in relation to certain others. Let us go on.
Small minority of public officials who are actually corrupt. I'm going to tell you this secret.
So I have to ask the question. There are members of Congress who are actually corrupt. He thinks most members of Congress are not actually corrupt. That's implied by what he said there. However, you can be perfectly corrupt in selling out, okay, to other interests while not being partisan vis-a-vis the two parties. Okay, it's easy. You can be bought by particular interests. You can be bought by the fossil fuel interests. You can be bought by pharma interests. You can be bought by the military-industrial complex. And you can still put together coalitions from the two parties. Certainly, Mr. Biden has a coalition going in back of the military-industrial complex for the support of wars in Ukraine and Israel. I'd say that's corruption, even though there's a coalition of Republicans and Democrats who support both of those things.
They too want liberation from the system that has captured them. And isn't that ultimately what we all want?
It's not just the party system that has captured them. It's the special interest system that has captured them, and it has captured them through big donations from various interests. We all know that. Is he addressing that problem?
Liberation from a system that robs us of our wealth, our health, our hope, our patriotism, our ideals, our freedoms, and ultimately our sense of ourselves as a good and capable people. Is healing our divided nation possible? Let's go take back our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
So far, he seems to want to take back our country from the two parties. But I don't hear him mentioning any other interests that we have to take back the two parties from. And I am disappointed by that.
I declare my independence.
I declare my independence.
I declare my independence.
We declare our independence.
I declare my independence. We declare our independence.
I declare my independence.
We declare our independence.
I declare my independence.
I declare my independence.
Yo declaro mi independencia. We declare our independence.
I declare my independence.
Humanity.
I would love to see Bobby declare his independence, not just from the two parties, but also from groups such as AIPAC, okay, and DMFI, and of course, the fortune left by Sheldon Adelson to his wife. We all know that Bobby has taken a position which is extremely pro-Israel. It's virtually an Israel right or wrong position. He allied himself with Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. He talked about the virtues of Israel in great, detailed. He talked about his family's traditional support for Israel. He talked about everything except for the human rights crimes and the war crimes that Israel was committing, in Gaza. This declaration of independence came out on October 9th, 2 days after the attack, on Israel by the Palestinians. While the Israeli response, the brutal Israeli response was beginning, it wasn't in full flower yet, but it has been now roughly 6 weeks since the response of the Israelis started. We all know the statistics. We all know the thousands upon thousands of Palestinians who were dead. We all know about all the Palestinian children who have been killed by the bombings and the Israeli attacks, on Gaza. We all know about the lies of the Israeli government that we continually examine and that we continually see. But all we have seen from the Bobby Kennedy campaign, from Team Kennedy so far, all we have seen from him since the wars have started, since the war in Israel started, all we've seen from him is silence. No comment on that. No comment on the human rights crimes. No comment on the war crimes. No declaration of independence from the big donors supporting Israel, regardless of what Israel does, come what may. When will he make a declaration of independence from them? When will we see that? I'm tempted to say, I suppose I will say, inquiring minds want to know. But I shouldn't be so flippant about that. That is a very, very important issue in this campaign. Because continuing blind support of Israel and of the regime there, no matter what they do, is a denial, of justice, and is a reckless foreign policy that will bring the United States closer and closer to regional war in that segment of the world, and closer to nuclear war, because there are near nuclear powers there, and there are other nuclear powers that do not want to see the extinction of the Palestinians, don't want to see the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, don't want to see the genocide, of the Palestinians. If Turkey decides to come in on this, the very existence of Israel would likely be threatened. If they come in with Iran in the conventional weapons area, then the Israelis would be overwhelmed and easily overwhelmed. What would we then have to do to back them up? Why should we back them up? Is it really in the national interest of the United States to back them up in that particular situation? What if the Israelis themselves resort to the nuclear warheads they have? It's variously estimated. I've heard the estimates as low as 80, as high as 400. There seems to be, from what I've seen, a rough consensus that they probably have 200 nuclear weapons. And the means with which to deliver them. They can reach Turkey. Isn't far away. They can reach all the powers in the whole Middle East. And this regime has shown enough extremist behavior to encourage us to believe that they will do anything to get their way. And that certainly, if their survival is threatened, they may well hit first and hit with all that, they have. I have to add at this point, a personal note. Well, let me go on with the end of the video first.
And are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the censure of their colleagues, the wrath of their society. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence.
It certainly is. And I call upon Bobby Kennedy at this point in his campaign to show the moral courage that he talks about. The moral courage that his uncle talked about. The moral courage that is rare, in American politics. I think that moral courage requires that he now renounce entirely large contributions, base his campaign solely on small contributions of $200 and less, and renounce and return any contributions he has gotten from AIPAC, from other pro-Israeli interests, and from the Adelson fortune, or any of the groups that the Adelson fortune has funded. I think he needs to show that kind of moral courage at this point. So we know that he has declared his independence of Israel and this Israeli regime. We need someone at the head of the United States who will be even-handed, who will work hard for a viable two-state solution, supervised by police forces from many nations that will protect the people of both sides through a transition period that will be necessary to stabilize the two successor states that will exist in Palestine if a two-state solution is to prove to be, a viable one.
It is the one essential, vital quality for those who seek to change the world.
I'm Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. and I approve this message.
Okay, so that's enough. He needs to show at this point the moral courage that he talks about. He needs to show that he is independent of the special interest donor money that is going to be flying around the 2024 campaign. He talks about the corruption and wanting to take America back from the corruption. But we know here that he cannot in any way do that without repudiating the funds from the large donors. This is about who takes the toxic donor money and who does not. It's not only about it in relation to foreign policy towards Israel. It's about that with respect to foreign policy towards Ukraine, foreign policy towards China, foreign policy towards the Pacific, and not simply foreign policy. In pronouncements from Bobby Kennedy, he's already said if he were elected president, he wouldn't be going after Medicare for all. What kind of democracy is it where more than 70% of the people support a Medicare for all bill and that bill can't get through Congress? There's only one reason it can't get through Congress, and that's because of the donor money. Bobby needs to repudiate that donor money as well. He needs to call for a Congress that will repudiate that donor money across the board. He needs to do it with respect to the Democratic candidates, all of whom are taking some of the big donor money, and with respect to the Republican candidates, all of whom are taking the big donor money. All of that must be gone from the system. The people have the power to do that through their vote if they vote against everybody who takes the big donor money. That's what the real meaning of dump the corruption is. Anybody who's talking about dumping the corruption and talking about doing something else is not really serious about dumping the corruption, because the corruption is embodied in the money that people take, because the money buys them. It buys their attention, it buys their loyalty, it buys their policy advocacy, it buys what they mobilize their voters around. That money cannot be in the system anymore. It must be driven out. And we can drive it out through the Dump the Corruption movement, and we must do that in the election of 2024. And just I'll be going shortly to another illustration of why that must be done. But I want to add a personal note for Bobby and for others to consider. What's been going on inside of Palestine is pitting the cause of justice, the idea of justice, pitting that against the idea of Zionism and greater Israel. we have to decide which side we are on. I want to say that I, am Jewish. I know Judaism very well. I studied it very closely when I was young. And I know that the central value of Judaism is not the Israeli state. It's not, a Zionist state. It is justice above all. Why is Moses the image of Moses in many of the courts, of our land? Why is it prominent inside of the Supreme Court? Because for Moses, the God of Israel was a God of justice. If there is a conflict in values for Jews, such that we must choose between justice, or a Zionist Israel, then I believe that most of the Jews of the world, the majority of the Jews of the world, in the end will support the cause of justice. Because that is what is central, to Judaism. The idea of having a Jewish state, once more, that certainly has been important, to the tradition. But it has not been central. And in the context of a conflict between these two values, the Jewish way is justice. The Jewish way is not unflinching support for Israel, whatever crimes they commit and whatever the hell they do. And I say that as someone who has relatives over there. I know lots of other Jews are going to disagree with me. We all have to make that choice. For myself, the central value of Judaism is justice. As I have said, it is justice above all. Justice must be done, in Palestine. At long last, it must be done. I'm going to forget about the third article I intended to cover tonight. And we'll begin to go over your comments. So, Steve Wolfbrand, Kay Reiner here. Everybody says hello. April Mono, otherwise known as Andy Candy, is here too and says, hi, folks. Isn't the AIPAC money that's spent to buy corrupt U.S. politicians the same billions that the U.S. sends over there every year? No, I don't think it is. I think we send many more billions over there than they spend over here. Anyway, Brandy says, hi, Steve, and a number of people greet them. Kay says, where's Dee tonight? I don't know. Dee had her show. I was there, and I kind of expected her to come over here, but she didn't. Okay, but Madeline is evidently here. So hi, Madeline. And Madeline says, okay, it already exists at 936. I'd like her to clarify what it is. Kay says, hi, Pesci, or Pesky, I'm not sure. Pesce, in Latin, I think means fish, but anyway, there it is. Steve Wolfbrand says, well, that ain't going to happen. Kay says, we need it, so it won't happen. That may be, but what I want to impress on you guys is, if you don't keep asking for it, and you don't keep demanding it, and you don't keep shouting it, then it will never happen. It will never happen. The worst thing we can do is say, well, that ain't going to happen, and give up. That is the right thing to happen, and we need to call on Bobby Kennedy to do that. He has claimed he is the peace candidate. The peace candidate needs to do justice in Palestine. The peace candidate needs to do justice in Ukraine. The peace candidate needs to do justice in foreign policy. If he's billing himself as the peace candidate, he needs to act like the peace candidate, or he needs to shut up and sit down. Steve Wolfbrand says, Doc, you know, okay, I never give up. Yes, Steve. Okay, I know you never give up. I do know it, and I appreciate it. And I know that others do not give up also. So we shouldn't say, well, that ain't going to happen, because it's up to us to keep on trying to make it happen. We have agency. Saying, well, that ain't going to happen may be realistic, but it denies our agency. And we got to use that agency, but to make it happen. So, any other comments? Steve says, it's just that I don't see a decent candidate to vote for. Steve, we have to work hard on these candidates so that we have a decent candidate to vote for. We can make these candidates more decent. That is what I am trying to do with respect to Bobby Kennedy. I'm pretty sure he's got some decent impulses, but he's got to know that we're not going to support him if he sells out, okay, to the big money. We're not going to vote for him if he sells out, okay, to the big money. I know some will say he's already sold out, okay, to the big money. Okay, it's too late. I am saying it is not too late. It is not too late. He can refund the big money. He can forswear it from here on in. He can act like the dump the corruption candidate he claims to be. So April says, Joe, you keep hope alive. I'm so happy when I can catch you. And Bonnie, of course. Well, thank you, April.
Thank you.
And Bonnie thanks you also. Kay says, okay, guys, I'm off to bed. I love you all. We love you too, Kay. We hope your new place to live has come through. Or that if it has not, that it will come through soon. Are there any further comments? Okay, I do have a bit of news. There is word from the Bobby Kennedy campaign that they are working on some very important statements that they will be releasing soon. I don't know when that will happen, but perhaps we can influence what those statements should say by circulating this video to people within the Kennedy campaign so it gets directly to Bobby Kennedy. I think he needs to see this video. He needs to clarify his values. He needs to grasp hold of his moral courage. And he needs to exercise it and not simply talk about it. He needs to show us that he would be the president with moral courage that we need. And there's no better way to do that than to renounce the big money and run a small dollar campaign. I know that if he runs a small dollar campaign, that he can raise $250,000 by next March. How do I know that? Because Bernie did it. That's enough to get his message out by March of next year. And with that message out, more and more small dollar donations can come in during the really intensive period between the end of March and November of 2024. He can raise $1 billion in small dollar donations for his campaign, donations of less than $200. He can even do it by averaging $15 per donation. We know that can be done. We've seen it done. He can do it too. But he has to have faith. In us. If he doesn't have that faith, he doesn't really deserve to be the president of the United States. Steve Wolfbrand says, good night, everybody. Good night, Steve. And thank you for coming. Any other comments? Give you a chance to make them while I take a couple of pills. And if you don't, as you haven't. And I will say good night for now. I'll probably see you in at least one stream over the weekend, though it won't be a stream of mine. And Dee says, hi, Dee. Dee is here. And she says, buy Joe a coffee. Thank you, Dee. I'll probably be on at least one stream of Dee's sometime over the next 3 days. And then, of course, I'll see you on Tuesday for my international relations show at 9 p.m. on Tuesday night. I'll also most probably see you on Dee's show if she has one on Tuesday night. So thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to say good night. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Good night.